Let's talk about a theme that is common in discussions among anarcho-capitalists about what justice and what getting justice for someone would look like in a stateless society, and that involves restitution versus retribution. And I'm curious about exactly what role that played in the Brehon Law.
I mean, this is an excellent question, and it's one of my more favorite points about this. To just put a little bit of historical context in here and legal context, when we think about the system today, when somebody commits a crime, let's say the uninitiated or those who haven't spent a lot of time studying law might be forgiven for assuming that a crime meant harm against an individual. But when we look at the legal definition of a crime, we realize that's not actually what's meant in a statist society. A crime is an offense against society as a whole, and then the state steps in as the injured party in a court case and basically uses the mechanisms of the state, the police force, enforcement mechanisms, debt collection, all of these things, in order to take compensation for the state, which should be rightly due to the victim. Now, this concept, I mean, it's kind of, I think when you lay it out and put it on paper, it does seem a bit baffling, but it was completely alien to the early Irish. You couldn't have a case without an injured party who was able to stand and put their hand up and say, look, I have been wronged by this man and I want compensation. So our system today, we use prisons as a means of dealing with, criminal, quote unquote, criminal behavior. But really what we're doing when we use prisons like nonchalantly like this, I mean, maybe there is a place for prisons in general, but using them for very like non-violent offences, let's say political offences for maybe speeding or littering and not having a television licence, as happens in Ireland. These sort of offences would be, I mean, they wouldn't be compatible in a normal sense of criminal law. So in the Irish system, the way it worked was, I mean, if somebody was aggrieved, they felt to be aggrieved. When somebody does something wrong to you in any part of your life, it's generally something that you feel in your gut. It's not a nice feeling. You've just been betrayed. You've just been wronged. So this was kind of, let's say, symbolic of a wrong that was within the community, not to the community, but somebody within the community has been wronged. So what they did in Ireland is they consulted the advice of a learned class of scholars who were known as the Brehons. The word Brehon simply is the Irish word for a judge. So it was what you might call a critarchy. We had sort of a learned class of people who spent a lot of time, up to 20 years, who were studying the customs and the principles that were established by the people. And this is crucial. They were not being established by the king or the higher ranks. It was established by the people. And your role as a Brehon was simply to find a remedy that would restore that imbalance, that would restore that feeling of hardship, that feeling of wrongdoing being held by the victim. And they found that the easiest way to do this was to give a financial compensation. And this could be for all manner of offences, whether it was injury by accident or design. And there's a whole debate around whether this is appropriate or not, but even in the case of death, if you had accidentally or willfully killed a member of another family, well, then the family members were the rightful victims to claim the loss that you had incurred to their unit. And this was, again, calculated financially. So you could imagine somebody who committed such a crime being in debt for much of their life to pay off, to restore, let's say, this family to the position they were in before the offence took place.
Well, I bet there'd be some people who would wonder if, under a system like that, where it was a financial compensation that someone had to do to make things right, wouldn't the rich person who was a sadist just go around plucking people's eyes out or something, just figuring he could pay the penalty? Would you deal with that partly through this method you were mentioning before, that people of higher means or people who are higher up on the scale would have more severe penalties? How do you deal with that?
Absolutely. That's exactly how they done it. the penalty for the offence for someone of higher rank was found in such a way that it would become a deterrent for them to behave in such a way. But let it not be mistaken that I really am speaking about a utopian system here. I mean, it wasn't perfect. There was obviously problems with power struggles. There was obviously problems with corruption as well. But all in all, the self-regulating nature of the legal system was such that it kept that to mostly a minimum, and it was like family feuds and stuff like that did happen. But to put it into context, after the fall of the Roman Empire, during the Christian era of Ireland, Ireland was colloquially named as the land of the saints and the scholars. This was at a time when we didn't have a state. This is at a time when we today might refer to it as an anarchic system.